Ian from RTO here. Welcome to another album ranking. In the row saying, well, it's Wednesday, where's the marathon? Well, I've got a confession, I milked up. I didn't review a new album at the end of 9th of 2022, so I'm going to do it on Friday as a nearly new album, so I had to jiggle about, so I put something in that's not so long so I could get something else in today. So and today we're going to look at the Alan Parsons Project. Viewers request again, quite a few have asked for this one. I know one of my, who I do done a few shows with, Joe from Joe's Universal Vinyl. He loves the Alan Parsons Project, so he'll be looking forward to this one. Alan Parsons, to me, it's one of those bands that I've not had a great deal of material, but I've got greatest hits. So when I started this ranking, luckily all the albums are on Spotify, so I was able to get them onto my pod so I can have a good listen to them, and they're staying there because I think they're all brilliant. There isn't a really bad album apart from one or two, but the rest are solid. So I've added them into my greatest hits album. So they've released 12 studio albums in their time. There was the core of Alan Parsons doing the singing, songwriting, piano, keyboard wizard Eric Wolfson and vocalist, and the guitarist Iain, who doesn't just not appear on the project stuff, he appears on his solo stuff. Today we're only going to look at the Alan Parsons Project, but next week we will look at his solo stuff, because you can't do one without the other in my books. So 12 albums. So here we go. Coming in number 12 then is the fourth album, and it was released in 1979, and it is called Eve. Lots of people on here, but the main sort of core of the band is Andrew Powell, who does the orchestral arrangements, David Payton, bass player, Stuart Elliott does some drumming, Ian Bearson on the guitars, Eric Wolfson's keyboards, Duncan McKay did keyboards, Chris Rainbow does some singing, so does Leslie Duncan and Claire Torrey, and then there's a host of people on here as well, including the orchestra of the Munich Chamber Opera, care of Eberhard Schroeder. So there we go. So first track on here is called Lucifer. It's got a promising start, a really good intro, and then you get some horrible tinny drum machine, which sort of spoils it. It's a shame because it's got quite a good tune. Then we get a track called You Lie Down With Dogs. This isn't too bad. This is sung by a chap called Lenny Zaktek. It's really good. I like that. He's got a good voice. Not a bad track. Then we have a track called I'd Rather Be a Man. It's okay. This is got David Payton singing on it. He's more known for his bass work, of course, but he can sing, and he sort of was with Fish later on in his career. Not a particular favourite of mine. You Won't Be There. Oh, this is sung by a chap called Dave Townsend. It's a little bit wishy-washy for me. Winding me up, Chris Rainbow. Now, I like Chris Rainbow's vocals. Very good. It's an okay track. Then we get Damned If I Do. This is a really rock track. It's got a great solo in this. Lenny Zaktek singing again. Don't Hold Me Back. Very poppy, but it's sung by Claire Torrey. Of course, been on lots of stuff. Secret Garden, not too keen on this one. And then we got If You Change Your Mind. Now this is my favourite song on here. It's sung by Leslie Duncan. It's got a lovely voice, and it's the best track on the album. It's a very poppy album. I've I think I've only played this one all the way through twice. I mean, I'm not very keen on this one, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 3 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 11. Now this is a strange album. It's called the Sicilian Defence. It was the 12th and final album, released in 2014. Now this was the final Alan Parsons Project studio album. It was released 24 years after the band split, and the only way you could have got it up until a few years ago was in a box set of the complete albums. So this was recorded originally in 1979. It was never actually intended for release, but was sent to the band's label Astra as a sort of chess move, hence the name. They did not feel that there was they hadn't been given adequate time to make a new album, and it was just unfinished bits and bobs and not proper songs. So it eventually came out in 2014. So on here there's only Alan Parsons and Eric Wolfson's. So the first one is called PK4. It's quite a nice little keyboard bit, but the drum machine didn't work. Then we have one called, now they're all weird titles, PQB4. Really nice piano piece by Eric. I like this. Really good. Then we get KTKB3. Very Jean-Michel Jarre. Sounds like it's played on a Casio though, so yeah. Then we get KTQB3, which is very short, just fun, sort of funfair thing. Yes, alright. Then we get PQ4, which is more piano from Eric, very eerie and gentle. Then we got P times P, ruined by the cheap nasty drum machine, but you got to remember that this was just stuff they were putting down as ideas. Then we get a thing called KT times P, which is the best piece on here. This was near enough finish, I think, this track, because the drum machine sounds a bit better. There's a lot of depth in this. They've had some more layers. It's pretty good. I like that. Then KTB3 is just loads of noises. Doesn't make any sense. KTQB3. I think this would have been a good track if they'd have finished it. It's got the sort of foundations of a good track. Then the last track is called PQ3. Some nice little keyboard runs in this. Again, unfinished work that may have been something good. Yeah, I don't like this album. Don't dislike this album. Obviously it's very raw and basic, and all it does is show how Eric and Alan used to put stuff together. I mean, it's a shame we never heard the final pieces of this, because I think there's some really good tracks in there. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 4.5. Okay then, coming in number 10. We'll go to the 11th album now, released in 1990, and it's called Freudiana, which is a rock opera written by Eric Wolfson. So performing on here is Eric Wolfson on keyboards and vocals, Alan Parsons on additional keyboards, Andrew Powell does the orchestrals as he usually does, Iain Bearson on the guitar, Laurie Cottle on the bass, Richard Cottle on synthesizers, Stuart M. Elliott plays the drums on this. First track on here is an instrumental called the Nirvana Principle. It's a very dramatic start of like a rock opera. The drums good, there's a bit of drum machine, it all works. Really, really good little track. And then we get Freudiana, or Freudiana, depends how you pronounce it. Eric sings this, it's okay. It's quite a nice gentle track. Then we have I Am A Mirror. Now the lead vocal on this is done by the one and only Mr. Leo Sayer. I like this. It's a great vocal from Leo. I like that track a lot. Then we get Little Hands. This is sung by Graham Dye, who does a lot of work with the project, along with Chris Rainbow. It's a very quirky track. Sounds Beatlesque. Very good track. Dora. It's very dour. Probably the weakest song on the album. Then we get Funny You Should Say That. This reminds something of Sparks. This is so Sparks. I really like this. You can imagine Ron singing. It's a really good song. Then we get my favourite track. This is sung by Kiki D, and it's called You're On My Own. Fabulous track. Great rock track. Outstanding vocals here from Kiki D. Now, Far Away From Home. Now this is done by the Flying Pickets. Remember them? The a cappella sort of band that did a version of Only You by Yazoo. Yep, I didn't like that, and I don't like this. Simple. Then we get Let Yourself Go. This is another Eric vocal. It's okay. Yeah, it's not too bad. Then we get Beyond the Pleasure Principle. This is an instrumental. I love this track. Great composed track from Alan. Pretty cool track. Then we get The Ring. Now, lead vocal on this is Eric Stewart, of course, from 10cc. Great song, great vocal from Eric. Reminds you sort of the great little tracks that he did with 10cc. Now, here's a good one. Sex Therapy. Lead vocal is done by Frankie Howard. Titty Knott. Lurkio. The prologue. It's quite funny. He's talking, but I mean, I've loved Frankie Howard, so yeah, his timing is impeccable on this, as it always was. Great little track. Okay, then we get another really good track, and this one's called No One Can Love You Better Than Me. Now, lead vocals done here by Kiki D, Marty Webb, Gary Howard, and Eric Wolfson. Really a proper sort of musical sort of stage sort of track. Really good. Then we get Don't Let the Moment Pass. Marty Webb sings this, and it's really nice. Great vocal from Marty Webb. She had a really great voice. Upper Me, Eric's back on the vocals, and it's pretty good. Another exceptional vocal. Then Freudiana, the instrumental. Love this. The bass line is terrific. Destiny, this is Chris Rainbow on the vocals. This is lovely. Very talented singer is Chris Rainbow. He's done so many backing vocals for artists. Great track. Then we get But For the Grace of God, John Miles, the great John Miles, and Marty Webb. Really good song. Great vocalist. We'll be doing some John Miles later in the year, I can assure you. Very enjoyable album. Some good songs on here. An enjoyable listen. I've never heard this, but I really like it. You have to sit down and listen to it under the headphones to really appreciate it. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 5 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 9, we get to the end. We go to the 7th album now, released in 1984, Ammonia Avenue. Joining Alan on this one, Iain Berson on the guitars as usual, Mr. Colin Blunston on vocals from the Zombies, Mel Collins on saxophone, who's played with absolutely everyone. He must be one of the most mentioned musicians on this channel. Stuart Elliott on the drums, David Payton on the bass, Andrew Powell's doing his all arrangements, Chris Rainbow's back, Eric Wolfson's on the keyboards, Lenny Zektek's here as well, and then you've got the Philharmonica Orchestra as well. First track on here is a thing called Prime Time. Like this. Great vocal from Eric, and the guitar brilliant from Iain. Very underrated guitar player. Come up with some really good solos in his time. Let Me Go Home. It's okay. Very 80s, I'm afraid, but great vocal from Lenny. Like the guitar work on this. One Good Reason. Love Davey Payton's bass line on this. Proper stuff. Very catchy tune. Since the Last Goodbye. Great vocal here from Chris Rainbow. I like this track, and again a really great bass line. Don't Answer Me. A very quirky track. Very 60s and pastiche. Very, very good track from Eric Wolfson on the vocals. Then we get Dancing on a High Wire. Love this song. Great vocal from Corin Blunston. Really good singer. You Don't Believe Me. 280s for me. Then we get this instrumental called Pipeline. I love this instrumental. It's quirky. Okay, it's very 80s, but it's really good. And then we get my favourite track. I've always liked this track, Ammonia Avenue. Reminds me of John Miles's music in places. It's got that same sort of structure. Great vocal from Eric on this. For an 80s album, it's not bad. It's got some really good tracks on this, so I shall give this an RTO ranking of 5.5. Although it's not a long one, I've got a real dry throat today. Right, coming in at number 8, we go to 1987 now, and the 10th album, Gaudi. And Gaudi refers to the architect, and if you've been to Barcelona, there's tons of his stuff all over the place, including that rather famous cathedral. So who's on here? Eric Wolfson on pianos and keyboards. Alan Parsons is synthesizing and doing what he does. Ian Benson on the guitars. Laurie Cotty on the bass. Stuart Elliott on drums. Richard Cotty on synthesizers, and vocals are shared between John Miles, Lenny Zacatec and Jeff Barrowdale. The first track is called La Sagrada Familia. My Spanish is not brilliant. I only know how to order beer and food in Spanish. So John Miles does the vocals on this, and you got Eric and Chris doing the backing. Great vocal from John Miles. I love this track. Too Late. This is Lenny singing. A lot of guitar work for me, and on this, really good. Although it's sounding that 80s sound, it's still really good. Closer to Heaven, my favourite track on here. Great vocal from Eric Wolfson and a fantastic piece of saxophone. Then we get Standing on Higher Ground, a good track, but very 80s sounding, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's Jeff Barrowdale doing the lead on that one. Money Talks, a really good track. Great vocals from the great John Miles. Love the guitar work on this. They're very smooth, but it's still got a bit of an edge. Looking Out, some acoustic guitar on this, but it's pretty dull. It's too long as well. Then Paso de Gracia, love this. It's got Spanish guitar, it's got castanets, real Spanish sort of track. I really like this track. Again, a very good album. It's got some really good textures on here, a bit of Spanish feel to it. It's not bad, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 5.6. Okay then, coming in at number 7, go to the 8th album now. This was released in 1985, and it's called Vulture Culture. On here, usual sort of suspects from the constant people from the Alan Parsons Project. Iain Bearson's on the guitars, Colin Blunston's back on the vocals, Richard Cottle doing the old synthesizers, Stuart Elliott doing some drumming. Then we got Mr. Laserbeam vocals, speech and speaker and speaking parts. Alan Parsons, of course, David Payton's on the bass, Chris Rainbow vocals as usual, Eric Wolfson and Lenny Zakatek. First track is called Let's Talk About Me. I like this. It's a great vocal from David Payton. Very good. Separate Lives. This is what I call typical Alan Parsons Project music. Fantastic. Days Unnumbered, The Traveller. Chris Rainbow sings this. One of the worst tracks on the album. I don't like it. Sooner or Later. It's 80s, but it's got a catchy tune to it, so it's not too bad. Then we get my favourite track, the title track, Vulture Culture. Lenny does the singing on this. Great start to this. Got some great saxophone on it as well. Hawkeye. Another instrumental, absolutely brilliant. Alan Parsons, perfect track. Somebody's Out There. This is Colin Blunston singing. Although it's got that 80s guitar work on it, it's the keyboards that really lift this track. Then we have The Same Old Sun. That's a nice little track. This has got a really sort of mixed bag on it. Very listenable, although you can't not dislike listening to Alan Parsons. Even if the singing's a bit, yeah, you listen to the music and the music's fantastic. So I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 6, we've got another 9th album from 1985, Stereotomy. Usual suspects on here: Eric Wolfson, Alan Parsons, Iain Bearson, David Payton, Stuart Elliott, Richard Cottle. Got the Philharmonia Orchestra on here. Vocals shared between John Miles, Chris Rainbow, Gary Brooker, Graham Dye, Stephen Dye and Eric Wolfson. First track is the title track, Stereo My. Lead vocals here done by John Miles. I love John Miles' vocals. Really good. Ian's guitar is fantastic on this as well. Then we get Beaujolais. This is sung by Chris Rainbow. Just one of them 80 songs that's just not very memorable. Urbania. This is an instrumental. Nice guitar work from Ian on this. The keyboards are great. It's a great track. Oh dear, the throat's wobbling today. Goods Undying. There we go, that's better. Next track, Limelight. This is sang by the great Gary Brooker. I love this. Great vocal from Gary. I like that one a lot. Then In the Real World, which is a song sung by John Miles. Poppy track. Good stuff. It's actually quite good. Where's the Walrus? Now this is an instrumental. My favourite track. One of my favourite tracks by the Alan Parsons Project. It's got lots of 80s overtones on it, but the guitar work is really good, and the interplay between the guitars and saxophone is really good, and it makes it a fantastic track. Then we get Light of the World. Graham Dye on this, a bit wishy-washy, not particularly favourite. Then we get this little short thing called instrumental called Chinese Whispers. The guitar work on this is fabulous. It may be short, but it's a minute of great guitar playing. Then we get Stereotomy 2. John Miles does the vocals. It's very short. It should have just been put together on the first track. Call it one track. This is a really good album. I'd say it's probably of the later albums in their career, it's probably one of the better ones. It's got some great guitar work here from Iain Bearson. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay, top 5. This is the cream over the cream, I think. This is when the Alan Parsons Project was at its best. It's really tough. This is the stuff I really do know. So coming in number 5, we go to the debut album from June 1976, and it's Tales of Mystery and Imagination. On here we got Alan Parsons, Eric Wolfson. Guest appearance of Sky's Francis Monkman, David Paynton on acoustic guitar and bass guitar, Kevin Peake from Sky doing some acoustic guitar, Iain Bearson on the electrics, Arthur Brown, the Arthur Brown, and John Miles doing the vocals and a bit of guitar. Starts off with a little instrumental called A Dream Within a Dream. I love this. The guitar work on this is absolutely fantastic. Great track. The Raven. Great track. Real lot of atmosphere on this. Then The Telltale Heart. I love this track. Arthur Brown does the vocals. Some great drumming on this track. Always like that one. The Cask of Amontillado. John Miles does this. Great vocal. It's just a fantastic track. I love the brass on this and the horns. It really adds to it. Then we get The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. Another John Miles singing track. The keyboards are stunning on this track. Then we get an amazing track called The Fall of the House of Usher. Split up into a few parts. First part is the prelude. It's a dramatic orchestral piece. Really like this, eerie, and it starts building up. Then we get Arrival, very short piece, but it's got Francis Monkman on it. You can pick him out straight away if you're a big fan of Sky. You know it's him. Then Intermezzo, another short piece, and great music on here. The horns are fantastic. Then we get Pavane, my favourite piece on here actually of the whole movement. You get the wonderful harpsichord of Francis Monkman and the acoustic guitar work of Kevin Peake. Really, you might as well be listening to Sky on that because it's fantastic. Then we get full, very dramatic kettle drums, brass. Really great way to close the track. My favourite track on the album. 15 minutes of pure genius. And then we have to One in Paradise. Dramatic end. After that dramatic ending of the House of Usher, you get this lovely pastiche song to the end of the album and brings you out to some sort of normality. Wonderful little track. What a great debut album. It's got everything in here. Classical music, prog music, electronic music. Excellent album from top to bottom. So I'll just give this an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, then coming in number 4 is the third album, released in 1978, Pyramid. David Paynton on the bass, Stuart Elliott on the percussion, Iain Bearson as ever on guitars. Keyboards supplied by Eric Wolfson and Duncan McKay. Vocalists on here are Dean Ford, Colin Blunston, Lenny Zetak and John Miles. And Phil Kenzie does a little bit of saxophone, and Alan plays a bit of keyboard and puts it all together. First track on here is an instrumental called Voyager. That wonderful sort of keyboard start, punchy. Bass and guitars are good. Great short piece to start the album. What Goes Up, a song sung by David Paynton. I love this nice chunky rock guitar sound for the late 70s. The Eagle Will Rise Again. This is Colin Blunston, a fine vocal from him. I like this track. It's an interesting track. One More River. This reminds me little bits of Skies Where Opposite Meets. Great vocal from Lenny Zetak, and I like the saxophone on here because I like saxophone. Can't Take It With You. This is Dean Ford singing on here. It's okay. Then we get my favourite track on here. Another one of my favourite tracks by Alan Parsons. In the Lap of Gods. Certainly got that Pyramid. The album's called Pyramid. It's got that Egyptian feel to it. I just love listening to that. Then we get Pyromania. This is a good track, but it doesn't fit on with the album with the theme of the pyramids. Still a good track though. Hyper Gamma Spaces, sorry. Quirky little instrumental. It's a bit different for the time. It was, you know, not what you'd expect from this sort of period in rock history. Shadow of the Lonely Man, great song. John Miles on this, then Colin Blunston joins in, really strong song. Another strong album with some really good playing on this. Solid, again, not a bad track really on this one. So we're going to give that one an RTO ranking of 7.6. Okay, the top three. Was this a headache? I think these three albums as good as each other. This may be the controversial, but I don't know. This was just so hard to split these three albums. So this is how I've done it today, but it could change. Depends what mood I'm in. So coming in at number 3, we go to 1982 and the 6th album, and it's the brilliant The Eye in the Sky. Vocals on here are done by Chris Rainbow, Lenny Zetak, Elmer Gantry, Eric Wolfson, who also does vocals. Colin Blunston's on here. The English choral choir's on here. Alan Parsons, of course, doing the programming on the keyboards. Andrew Powell doing the orchestrals. David Payton plays his drums. Mr. Bearson's on his guitars. Mel Collins comes back, and Stuart Elliott on the drums. First track is Sirius. Very short piece, eerie keyboard, nice guitar, brilliant. Eye in the Sky, another brilliant track. Great vocal from Eric Wolfson, I love that track. Children of the Moon starts very quiet and then it explodes into this wonderful track with a great vocal from David Payton. I like that track a lot. Gemini, very gentle track. Great vocal from Chris Rainbow. Silence and I love this. This is brass progressive rock with some great guitar work, a great vocal. My favourite on the album without a doubt. You're Gonna Get Your Fingers Burnt, one of the rockier tracks on here, another solid track. Some great guitar work from here and on here. Psychobabble, the piano work is really good, and I love the bass line on this. It's a great little vocal from Elmer Gantry. And then we get an instrumental called Magama, one of my favourite instrumental tracks by Alan Parsons. Really like that track, it's just fantastic. And one of those tracks you must listen to under the headphones. Step by Step, weakest track on the album. Not my thing at all. Then we get Old and Wise. We got this orchestral sort of track. Great vocal from Eric. Really good. A great album. The only one I really don't like is Step by Step. Found it a little bit wishy-washy, but the rest of the album is superb. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Even got tougher with the top two. Deary, deary me. But I went with this one. So coming in at number 2, we got a 1977 second album, I, Robot. David Payton, Stuart Tosh is on drums here, Ian Bearson on the guitars, Eric's doing the vocoder and keyboards, Alan Parsons on the keyboards, Duncan McKay does a little bit of keyboards, BJ Cole does the steel guitar, John Leach does the Chimbalamoon and Cantel. Singing again, we've got loads of people on here, including Lenny Zetak, Alan Clark. First track, I, Robot. I love this. Always have. It's my favourite, one of my favourite songs. I like that dramatic start. The keyboards, the choral comes in, and then it goes into this proggy electronic thing. Absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't want to be like you. Great track. The bass line as usual from David Payton. Top draw. Nice keyboards. Fantastic vocal from Lenny again. Some of the Time. A brilliant track. The contrast between Peter Straker and Jackie Wintram, really good, but they complement each other and it's a really good track. Some great sax on it. Superb track. Breakdown. This is sung by Alan Clark from the Hollies. Great vocal. He's a great singer. I like that track. Don't Let It Show. Nice gentle track. Dave Townsend doing the vocals. Bass line is solid. Then we get The Voice. Now this is sung by Steve Harley. My second favourite track on here. It's atmospheric. It's eerie. Great vocal from Steve Harley. And the guitar work is great. Then we get an instrumental called Nucleus. Atmospheric instrumental. The keyboard keeps fading in and out. Very clever stuff. Day After Day. The show must go on. This is wonderful. It reminds me of a very late Pink Floyd or David Gilmour solo stuff. Very gentle vocal from Jack Harris. Some lovely guitar work. Total Eclipse. Very dramatic. Love the horns in this. The English choral doing a wonderful job. It's got lots of atmosphere. Then we get Genesis chapter 1 verse 32. Absolutely brilliant piece of music. Great guitar work on it. The vocal is fantastic. It's just a great way to end this fantastic album. A brilliant album from top to bottom. But it's one of them albums that you don't just put on and pick tracks. You have to play the whole damn thing. Love listening to this under the headphones. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.5. So we got to my number one. I think this is number one because it has got my favourite track ever by Alan Parsons Project, and I think that's the only reason. So it was released in 1980. It's the fifth album and it's called The Turn of a Friendly Card. Stuart Elliott on the drums, David Payton on the bass, Ian Bearson, Eric Wolfson, Alan Parsons, Chris Rainbow, Elmer Gantry and Lenny Zetek. Andrew Powell does all the orchestral arrangements. Opens up with May Be a Price to Pay. Love the start of this. Got that grandeur of trumpets and brass, funky guitar. Should have been in a 1970s cop show. Really good. I love it. Love that track. Games People Play. I love the sequencing on the keyboards on this one. The harmonies are brilliant. It's just a really well put together track. Rocks in places as well. Then we get Time. Another great track. It's nice and gentle. After the first two tracks and lots of dramatics, they take it down a step. And then we got I Don't Want to Go Home. I think this is Lenny's best vocal he ever done in the Alan Parsons Project. It's a superb track with a great guitar solo. Then we get the Goldbug. Really good track. What I like about this is Chris Rainbow's sort of wordless vocals. He was very good at that. There's lots of stuff he's played that's on that. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Really complements the playing on that one. Then we have got my favourite track ever. It's the title track. The Turn of a Friendly Card. Oh, it's just brilliant. Starts off with some lovely gentle piano. Great vocal from Eric. Then we go into the second bit. It's very good. Again, I love the keyboards and the drums. Sound really brilliant. And then there's my favourite bit, which is the bit in the middle. It's got that very medieval prop, harpsichords, trumpets, And the last bit, it's just the last but one bit as well. This is the bit that's called Nothing to Lose. The keyboard sounds like an accordion. It's a really nice piece. And then it builds up into that amazing end of this. The guitar's brilliant. This is the best thing they ever did. It's a tremendous way to end the album. I think this is an amazing album. I think the last track is an epic. It's got everything you need. Brass, Prog. The rest of the tracks are good, but the Turn of the Friendly Card is just an absolute masterpiece. And I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. So there we go, the Alan Parsons Project. Next week we'll have a look at his solo stuff, which is still as good. I've really enjoyed doing this because I have discovered some bits that I didn't know about. But that is now I've listened to this quite a lot, and I love the Turn of the Friendly Card album without a doubt. Okay, I'll be back later with just a bit of a one-off album thing. It sort of tidies up the Gong story, and it is an album that was done by Gilly Smith, David and Orlando Allen, and it's called I Am Your Egg. It's got one of the coolest album covers I've seen. So join me for that, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.